the role of QA is to make sure that these tests are done. And so, we're making sure that if a software developer says that this piece of code is supposed to do this, that's fine. But what quality assurance does is it makes sure that we do not get what we call regression. That's it, regression bugs. There we go. All right, regression bugs are bugs that used to work. This is a feature that used to work. So, for example, if I hit the jump button, the character jumps. Now the dev team went and they created some code, but now they assume that the jump button works. But when it goes to QA, our testers tested it and the jump button no longer works. That's the role of the QA, is to make sure that these regression bugs no longer are there. And so then they pass it back to the dev team, which is like, oh man, that new piece of code interfered with our jump code. Oh, we got to fix that, right? Without QA, we would have, back in the olden days, a lot of bugs that got reintroduced. And so you've probably seen that with some of the older games, if you played that before, where it was like, they brought out a new update, but what used to work before really nicely, now it no longer works. Or what used to be a fast game is now slow. These are regression bugs, and quality assurance protects us from that. It is a very important role, and you're going to hear things like unit tests, JUnit. You're going to hear things like automation and stuff like that. So QA is the role for that. Once again, you get paid very nice in the QA role, but it's actually one of the easier roles, but it is very, how can I put it, very boring at times. All right. So if you're looking for something that's really, really fun, you want to probably get into one of the other areas. But if you're looking for something that makes money, is not, as heavily intense, I would say QA can be kind of like that area. Next, game sales and marketing. This is a place where you're going to make some good money if you're very good at sales. All right. But it's an important role. How do we actually market our game? How do we get the sales for the game? How do we do our launching of the game? It's a very important thing, and this is a marketing role, right? You got to have marketing. You got to understand what a press kit is. You got to understand what marketing is in general, right? You got to understand what the various touch points are. Community managers. These guys there are the ones who are responsible for the community at large, right? Imagine, games like League of Legends or like Fortnite and stuff. You've got users who are on forums, who are online, who are on Twitter, who are on the social feeds. Somebody has to manage all those things and bring that into one area so that you can share that with the team. Maybe there's a bug that someone's reported. All right, that comes back into the software team. Maybe there's a sale that's coming up and everyone isn't sure about it. It's your responsibility to let people know, right? Maybe there's a new update that's coming out and you want to announce that. Maybe you're making a press release. Maybe you're making a press kit, which goes out to journalists who are going to write about the game, thus making sure that the game grows, right? So game sales and marketing, a very, very important part of the entire game industry. And same with community managers who communicate with the actual players themselves. Game writers. Many of you have probably not even thought of this, but this is an actual role, and it's a very important thing. Games are like movies. Many times, you've got storylines. You've got things that need to be written. So game writer is a very important role in the industry, and one that a lot of people need, especially if you're looking to make a game which has a storyline. And many times they do. I mean, it's no coincidence that you'll see some top games that have incredible stories. They have a writer. They've got many writers. All right. So it's just like writing for a movie at the end of the day. So it is a very important role, and it requires someone who's actually thinking about, the scripts, who's speaking, who's in the scene, what are the different things that they're saying, right? And to elicit certain emotions and certain things. All right. So a very important role. Game designer. Wow. This is one that gets so confused with game developer all the time. And I need you guys to understand, especially if you're just starting out, game designer and game developer are very different things. Okay. It's even though they get confused, the best way I can explain how different they can be. It's like me saying a race car driver versus, a taxi driver, or even just a regular driver. Even though they're both drivers, they're very two different parts. You know what I mean? If you took, a regular car driver and you said, oh yeah, he's a driver, and you have the, car driver driving, at 200, miles per hour on the freeway, they're going to get a ticket, they're going to get in big trouble, right? So that's the idea there. Game designers, game developers are two very different things. A game designer does not need programming, okay? They can actually create a game right on a piece of paper. Their goal is mechanics. Their goal is to be able to understand what are the pieces in the game? How does this game work? What is a win condition? What is a lose condition? What are we creating? And they could do it with, like I said, sheets of paper. They don't need an actual digital environment to do that. They don't need code to do that. The goal of the game designer is to understand what are we creating that is fun? What makes this game fun? What are the movement types? How does this object move? What are the different forms of game balancing, right? Are we using a random, number inside of there? For example, dice rolls are a great example of randomization, right? Are we actually having, characters move? How do they move? Think of the game of chess, right? When you're thinking about chess, the knights move different from the rook, different from the queen, different from the king. Each one has its own movement type, its own different things that it could do. It's the same thing with a game designer. They're looking at the different moving parts of the game, right? So if you say it's a side-scrolling game, all right, what exactly is going on there? What's the win condition? What's the lose condition, right? What are the different mechanics that are involved inside of that? That's what goes on in the game designer's mind. The game developer is to take those designs and use software code to make those a reality. All right. So that's the difference between the two. But so many times when you're just getting in the industry, you hear those two phrases kind of like equated, like they're the same thing, but they're not. Okay. So keep that in mind. Each one has a very important role. And inside of game designer, you're going to hear things like game theory. Okay. And it's a very important thing because with a game designer, game theory is something that comes up all the time. Whereas with a game developer, you're going to hear software, you're going to hear C#, you're going to hear things like that. Okay, so very, very different. Many times they merge. And if you're one person, chances are you're doing all of these things. Okay, but you don't have to. You can actually hire people who can do these other parts, especially if you're not good at certain parts. I suck at 3D graphics. I do. All right, so I find 3D modelers who can do it for me. All right, I suck at 2D art. I can do all right with 2D art, not too much, but I'm okay. But there are people who've got incredible eyes for art. I will hire those people. All right, same thing with certain other areas as well, right? You just want to keep them separated and in your mind when you're actually getting games because it could be a challenge. Finally, we've got UI UX designer. Okay, these people, their goal, even though they're similar to graphics and so on, their entire role is completely different. Their goal is to understand how the user interface works, how the user experiences when you're playing the game. For example, if it's a mobile game, all right, I've got a phone right here, an iPhone, but look at how I'm holding this thing. The goal of a UI UX designer is to understand how I'm holding this thing. You see where my thumb is on the screen? It can't go further than this point. So if I know that it's a one-handed game, it would be really silly for me to make a button up here where I have to now bring a second hand over. You know what I mean? Especially if it's a one-handed game. So then the UI UX designer, their goal is to make sure to understand that, oh, you know what? We should keep our button range within the bottom half of the screen. That's what they're thinking. Very important to have that, right? What's the user experience? That's the UX, right? What are they experiencing when they're playing this game? So these are, once again, a different role, and it's a different thing that's being done. Once again, I would say it's a mid-level job that you're going to be getting, when it comes to money. But that's the idea there.